when I get to a point of like, I start losing my steam. Because I have pretty intense days, I start losing my steam around 3 o'clock.
3 o'clock.
Yeah.
You start at like 8, 9?
I'll start at a different day. If I'm really like, so it kind of goes through ebbs and flows. So if I go through, like right now I'm on there's not that much work to be done, but I know coming up soon I will. But if let's say for example, like I have to do a lot of things, that intensity will probably last for maybe 2 weeks, and I'll come into the office anywhere from 7:30 to 8:30, and it's like intense until 3 p.m. And then because it's so intense, it's just like next.
Do you take little breaks throughout?
I'll try and take little breaks, but sometimes I don't even have time to take little breaks. Like my lunch, a lot of times I'll run to go grab a lunch, I'll get it to go, and I'll come back. So it's like half an hour max, and then I'm just back at it. And I always have like a little lunch, because if I have a big lunch, I find I get like tired and stuff.
Such a slum. It's unbelievable. I don't understand how people eat lunch, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I agree with you.
After I have a lunch, it's over.
Yeah.
I'm going to bed.
Yeah.
Can't do it.
But if I have like a little lunch, or maybe just like a protein shake or something, I'm okay. But yeah, if I sit down, I have like a whole meal. And especially people, for example, that have like a hamburger, a Coke, and French fries, how the fuck do you go back to work?
I never understood people who do that.
Yeah.
And I think that's the average worker, right? They come to work and they have their little stipend, right? They're like $15, $20 every day, lunch.
Yeah.
How do you do it?
But I think the average worker, I don't want to sound like an asshole, but I think a lot of people don't really care that much. It's a job. Of course. So if they're tired, they're like, whatever, I'm tired.
That's a good point. In the end, it's just a paycheck. They're going to do the bare minimum. As long as they don't get fired, and they get their paycheck at the end of the day, they're happy.
Why do you think, or let's get into this, why is there such a rise of
silent quitting?
It's like there's just a rise. There's this animosity towards success, I find, in the West.
Yeah.
And on the one side, I get where the workers are coming from, because the gap between the rich and the poor has been drastically exacerbated over the past 10 years, and it keeps getting bigger and bigger.
Even worse, the last 4 years.
It's massive. Yeah. Some of it's money printing. Some of it's just the nature of human beings. Ever heard of the Pareto principle? It's kind of like the 80-20 rule.
Okay.
So it's like over time, just asset holders. It's just, you ever heard the saying, like, once you become a millionaire, it's a lot easier to go from 1 million to 10 million as it is to go from 0 to 1 million. So I feel like there's some of that. There's a lot of factors that go into it, but I understand both sides, where I get the worker, where they're a little bit, jealous of someone who has a lot of success and they're coming in and working every day. But at the same time, I feel like there's a lack of understanding on their side that without the job creators, without the entrepreneurs, there is no society. Like society, the taxes are mostly paid by successful people.
They are. But on top of that, they're also the people who took the risks.
Yes,
right?
Correct.
And that's the one thing a lot of them forget behind everything. There's a risk to starting a company. Maybe they see the success 10 years down the line. They'll look at Bezos and see he's a freaking billionaire and he's like shitting money left and right. Yeah. There's also two things, by the way. A lot of people have a misconception about net worth versus income.
Yes.
Because we're seeing a lot of, I guess it's the political cycle right now, but there's a little bit of a push to tax unrealized gains, which is insane. It's insanity, but that's a complete lack of understanding.
Let's go. Do you want to go on this tangent now, or we're going to have to try and like stay focused here.
It's hard, man. It's hard,
But it's like, for those that don't understand, so an unrealized gain, so taxing your wealth. So for example, let's say you're worth $10 million.
Yeah.
Someone who doesn't have a lot of money is going to go, well, yeah, tax them. I have nothing. This person is $10 million, tax them. But in practice, in reality, how it would work, so let's say, for example, I'm worth $10 million. I'm not, but let's say I'm worth $10 million. I would have to pay a tax before liquidating my actual stock in the company. And chances are I'm not going to have that cash on hand. So how am I going to get that cash on hand? I'm going to have to sell some shares or liquidate some of my shares. Now, the next issue is, how do we determine the value of the company? What tax on a publicly traded company is very easy to do, but most companies are not publicly traded. So who's going to be the arbiter of what's this company worth? And I don't trust the government for a second. They're obviously going to go on the high end. We're going to go on the low end. And then, so I have to come up with that cash. I have to liquidate my shares. Well, who's going to buy the shares? Chances are a big corporation is going to buy my shares, because they're going to be the only ones with enough cash.
Yeah.
And then this is just going to create, so if you think it's uneven now, pass that law, pass that legislation, and then if you really want to see how unfair it's going to get, pass that. Yeah. And so if we can kind of, this was interesting. So Kamala Harris gave a speech the other day, and it seems she's kind of walking back some of her wacko policies. I think at this point she's going to say whatever the hell she needs to say to get into power. I don't think she stands for anything. I think she's just a product of the Democratic Party.
She doesn't even know what race she is based on the day.
Yeah.
All right. It's sad to say you don't even. One day she's black, the next she's Indian. She'll be anything to anyone.
Yes.
Right?
And for me, I am afraid of someone who could get into power. I'm afraid of them getting into power because they don't stand for anything.
Yeah.
And you can say what you want about Trump. He does say some things, he's a little rough around the edges, obviously, but he's been extremely consistent in his policies.
Oh, yeah.
Like moving and anything he says. And I'm looking forward to the debate tonight. But here, let's just go back to like the first question. We're kind of going off on a tangent. We're just warming up here.
A little warm up.
Yeah. So why do you think, why is there such a rise of people on online platforms basically almost bragging about how little work they're doing, and this animosity towards success and this animosity towards business owners? Where do you think this is coming from?
Maybe it's a little bit of a revenge somehow. They feel like they've been taken advantage of for a long time. They've built animosity towards people who don't seem to struggle as much. It's true that the cost of living has increased tremendously.
Yes.
The burden on the average family right now is probably one of the worst it's ever been.
Yes.
And these people right now feel probably strapped, cornered, and if they can fight back the system that they deem to be unjust, they will. And I mean, I don't necessarily blame them. Like, I own a company, I have employees. However, I do understand that to them, their level of care towards the company is not the same as me, right? They don't have, sure, some of them have ESOPs, have stocks in the company, but they don't have the same
skin in the game.
They don't have the same skin in the game.
Yeah.
They don't care about it the same way I do. For them, it's a paycheck, and that was actually a very hard thing to realize at first. You start a company, you see it as your baby, and you assume everyone else who's coming on board sees it as their baby, right? And you're like, we're family, we're this, we're that. Ultimately, as we grew and as we've matured, I realized, look, I'm just an employer like anyone else, right? So
does that frustrate you, or you've accepted it now?
I've accepted it. I realize human nature. Maybe I'm a little not necessarily pessimistic, but jaded by everything through life. But I've had some people backstab me. I've had some employees who we've gone above and beyond for them. There was this one case, all right, and without getting too deep into detail, it was a sales guy or territory manager we hired. He was on commissions only. Brought him in, trained him, and sent him off. And he had a very hard time selling. Very, very hard time. But he seemed to have the will to improve. So we gave him a chance, 2 chance, 3 chance. At the end of the month, right, he was short on money. He barely sold anything. So he comes up to me and he's like, I need money, man, to pay rent. So I told him, look, I don't mind. I'll give you an advance on commission. So we gave him an advance on commission. The next month, same thing. He's having a hard time. So his boss, chief commercial officer, decides to go on meetings with him, decides to do extra training with him. Really, we invest a lot of time in him. And comes to a point where we're going to let him go. It's not working. But he comes to me again. He's like, please, I'm really getting the hang of it. I'm sure it will work out. Just give me another chance. But it was the end of the month, so he needed some money too. So I was like, can I have more rent money, So another advance on commission. Turns out after 3 months, he just couldn't cut it. So he comes to me, sorry, man, I'm going to get going. So I said, okay, cool. Now, I was within my right to ask for that advance on commission back. It's a short-term loan that the company gave him. But you know what? I'm like, he's having a hard time. I'll be nice. Pass it to the P&L, right? For me, it's voided, right?
That's very nice
It's
of you.
written off,
Yeah.
right? A year later, I get a phone call. It's the CNESSD,
Oh, God.
an inspector. The guy went to the CNESSD and told him we did not pay him his vacation pay and his minimum wage. So I tell the CNESSD inspector, I'm like, well, he will on commissions only. I have the employment contract, I have everything. I have his meetings documented and whatnot. Now, mind you, government worker. Of course, they're not the freaking brightest, they're not the sharpest tool in the shed.
They're not.
So he's like, no, the law still says that you must pay minimum wage. So went to our lawyers, took out that there's an exception in the law, in the employment law, that says that if it is for commercial work, commissions only on contract, and they don't have a set place of work, so basically they're on the road all the time, the minimum wage law does not apply. It was perfectly case in case for this guy.
Very clear.
In the end, they still decided to go forward, right?
The CNESSD did.
The CNESSD still did. Their reaction was, well, we'll let the judge decide, right? Let's just clog the legal system with such a silly, stupid, freaking court case.
And how much was he claiming? $5,000,
like
$7,000.
$7,000. Okay. All right. After I've already given this guy $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 advance as well, which I did not claim back. I did not go after him.
Yeah.
But for me, that moment, first of all, it's like, what a weasel.
Yeah.
What a little fucking weasel.
Yep.
And I felt so backstabbed. I'm like, this guy, we were willing to let him go after 1 month because he just didn't cut it. He sucked. He was horrible, right? But he came to me, yes, I want to try. I want to. Please keep me on board. Please keep me on board. And on top of that, give me some money. And we went above and beyond for this guy, and yet still turns around and backstabs you. After that moment, I've realized that, look, listen, no matter how much I trusted this guy, thought he had good intentions, good motivations, and that he had a good heart, nah, man, everyone's out looking for themselves for the most part. You have a few people you trust, but in the end, a business.
And I think that's also too, because it's like they're in their head, they're probably like, well, if the system allows for this type of horseshit to happen, I'm going to use the system.
Oh yeah, that's left and right. I mean, look,
it's also too like what happened to the days of before we were born, but back in the day, people collecting welfare, they were, this is what I've heard at least, they were almost embarrassed to collect it.
Yeah.
Yes, mind you, the cost of living was not nearly as expensive as it is today, but it was kind of like it was a sign of like, what are you, a loser? Like, so people were reluctant to go ahead and collect these government handouts. And society today, imagine if a political candidate ran on the same slogan as JFK when he said, it's not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. I'm getting like tingles just saying this. And that's a great saying. Imagine someone saying that today, a political candidate. They would be eaten alive by the media. 100%. And it's just like, what does it mean to be a Canadian? What does it mean to be a Canadian? Like, what's happened to our patriotism? What's happened to, I don't know, like stuff. This is a much bigger kind of topic, but stuff is, and I love talking about this, stuff is breaking in the West.
It is. And the problem is if you dilute your population, there's no more sense of unity.
Yes.
I spoke last time, right? On part 1 of this podcast. The Nordic countries, right?
Yeah, the Nordic, yep.
So over there, they have some of the most, ludicrous and gracious social programs ever.
Yeah.
It's insane.
Yeah.
And we're talking about like almost 100% income replacement for however long you need it. Right? It's insane.
That's insanity.
But people still have exactly the mentality you mentioned from back in the days. Nobody wants to be the person on the BS, on the freaking employment insurance,
society,
right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They realize that society's there as a safety net.
Yeah.
And I'll use it when things are really, really tough for me.
Yeah.
But it is my duty as a citizen
to contribute,
to take care of myself and to
Yes.
contribute, right? They're happy to pay taxes, but they're also happy to know the social safety net is there, right? But now we transponded to Quebec. Come on, let's be honest. What's the culture here? How much can we screw over the government?
Yeah.
Right? We have this pride almost. I mean, we're talking families after family, generations of BS, knowing all the little tricks.
Yeah.
And I just dealt with one recently, actually. So you guys insure one of my properties, right? And I had to deal with a tenant who was a little bit troublesome. It was a lady, maybe in her 50s.
Okay.
And at one point, her and I came to a lease termination agreement. We were supposed to terminate the lease on a specific day. And that day comes. She is not out of there. Okay. She asked me for a few more days. And it's okay. My brother's getting married. I'm like, I'm too busy.
Whatever,
take a few more days.
Yeah.
Right. 4 days later, she's finally out. She left a bunch of boxes in the shed that we have in that unit and tells me, I'll just leave it there for a few days. I'll come back. Please just keep it for me. I said, no problem. I'll be nice to you. I'm not going to charge you for this shit. So one morning I wake up, maybe 14 days later, and it's a journalist, TVA Nouvelle, reached out to me. I became overnight the most hated landlord in all of Quebec. Now, you're English speaking. You probably don't watch the French media that much. I was plastered everywhere. My face was all over the TV.
For what?
So initially with this lady, right, we were thinking about doing a repossession for having the ability to live in it. All right. Turns out we didn't go through with it. Instead, we just went with a lease termination agreement. She had refused it anyways, and we decided to do a lease termination. I think she wanted out of there anyways, so we signed that document. But after she was out of there, she went to TVA and said I bad faith evicted her with no proof whatsoever. Now the journalist reaches out to me and tells me, why did you kick her out? You lied to her. I have her version of the story. What is yours? And I said, well, you want a version of the story, I have a document saying that the termination, the lease was terminated.
Did she sign it?
She signed it, of course. And it's hilarious. You want to see the way she signed it?
Yes.
Look at this. This is BS 101 for you, okay? You're going to laugh. And I wish we could show this to the cameras, okay? It's ridiculous. I've never seen someone sign a document like this.
Okay. Okay. So her IQ is probably a little on the lower side.
Just so you know, okay? She opened Paint, and she signed it with Paint, okay? With Microsoft Paint. It's horrible.
Okay.
So, now the journalist was out to get me from the get-go. I told him there's a document. I'm more than happy to share with him. And he's like, no, you lied. You know, we're airing this thing. So
and this, okay, we're going to talk on that after. So media, and they're basically, because there's a narrative that they want to push. You're a successful white male. She's a poor BS woman.
100%.
And you're a bad person. She's the victim.
Yeah.
They don't even want to get the facts.
Not at all.
And this is the issue with media today. And this is why a lot of people don't like to watch legacy media, and no one our age watches legacy media, because they lie. They have 100%. A narrative. And again, this is kind of, are you done with that story? I'll let you finish that up. Is there any more details to it?
In short, right?
That up,
I just told him, look, listen, I have my side of the story. This document supersedes anything else that was discussed beforehand.
Yeah.
Right. And on top of that, we give each other quittance in there, right? So basically, like, you know, we absolve each other of any freaking recourse or whatnot. So she goes to the media, tells her sob story. She's unemployed. She's on the BS, and she was really on the BS.
Yeah.
Okay. And she got kicked out. She has an 18-year-old son, blah, 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 blah. And I'm just this bad motherfucker.
Yeah.
So I'm just one evening chilling, and I start getting messages on my phone from random people. They turn to cute. You're an asshole. You're this. I'm like, what the hell? So I had a feeling. I hop on TVA, and lo and behold, article, front page. And then I start getting messages from friends. They're watching TV and they're recording. My face is on all over TV. I became, again, overnight, the most hated landlord. For about a month, I was getting hundreds of messages.
On Instagram?
On Instagram.
Saying
on
you're a piece
Messenger,
of shit.
On everything that people could find me on, right? This dude posted the entire kind of like primetime, and that was actually on the night. So the primetime spot came out on the night of the first debate with Biden and Trump.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
So everyone was watching TV to begin with.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
So
that's a whole.
This guy reposted it on TikTok. Anyways, we're talking like 500-600 comments. So it was hilarious. But the whole thing, mostly that I saw, the recurring thing is, t'es riche, you're rich, right? How dare you kick a lady to the street? And first of all, I'm like, well, I didn't kick her to the street. She willingly sent herself to the street, it seems. And second of all, how do you assume that I'm rich? Because I own a fucking building? That doesn't mean anything, right?
And most landlords in Canada are not rich.
We're not talking huge corporations.
Yes.
We're mom and pop's little
like
landlord,
the vast
right?
majority of landlords in Canada are mom and pop landlords who have 1, 2, 3, 4 buildings. They rent it out, and they think that they're like these super rich people. And also too, it's like, I was going to go off on a tangent again, so I'm going to stop myself. But we're going to stick on the story. So,
well, all in all, look, nothing came out of it. She was threatening that she was going to go to the TAL. She was going to sue me and everything. Obviously, nothing came of it. She has no recourse to do so. But on top of that, in the article and on the TV, they went on to say that I threw away all of her boxes. I threw everything to the street, which is true. I did, after 2 weeks of holding on to it and texting her that, hey,
come pick up your stuff.
Come pick up your stuff.
Yeah, of course.
And she would either not reply, or she'd tell me that she would come and never come at the right time. And at one point I got tired. I'm like, I need that shed. It's mine. I need the freaking space.
Of course.
So I put it out.
Yeah.
So again, I'm an asshole through everything.
And I had the same experience, but on the tenant side. Yeah. And to my landlord's credit, she did a very good job, because I moved in and there was like all the former tenants' stuff was all still there. And I'm like, hey, this was supposed to be vacant. Get it out. She got it out the next day.
Fair enough.
So it's like, but also too, like, I'm a tenant where I'm a business owner, so I understand their side of the story, and I know that the amount of rent that I'm paying, I live in a house.
Yeah.
I know that the rent I'm paying does not cover all of her costs.
Yeah.
So honestly, even like little things, little maintenance around the house, I pay for a lot of it out of my own pocket. It's just easier.
Yeah, and I think that's a good thing, by the way. And you maintain a good relationship, although you're not obliged to do it. It's always appreciated.
I just like, because I understand her situation. I have a really, this is my logic, and I just wish more tenants thought like this. It's like, I'm appreciative of the price that I'm paying. Yeah. I would say it's below market price. It's $3,000 a month, but it's a house. It's a nice house in Point Claire.
Beautiful.
In Kirkland.
Even more beautiful.
Yeah, so it's a good rate. And the way I look at it, it's like, I know she's not making money on this. It's basically, she's counting on the market to go up. I know it's not cash flowing positive.
Yeah.
And I just want to be a good person, and I appreciate it, as opposed to like, just back to, again, like the original question, there's this victimhood mentality that's pervasive across society today. And it's like, the more you can claim victimhood status, the higher, like you almost gain like leverage over stuff. And just back to the media there, like my question for you is, and I've been trying to figure this out myself, what is, I know outside of clickbait, what is their motivation to not even want to get the facts and to frame a narrative that you're a big bad business owner and that she's the victim? Because they're part of the problem, and this is like all Western media. What's happening here?
Well, I think ultimately we're looking at, like any business, they have an agenda. For them, it's views, clicks, engagement time, money. Yeah, it goes down to money. Exactly.
And they do all that for money.
We're doing this for money, right?
Yeah,
we're not a charity. So now, who is more likely to relate to the story? A few business owners, which are far and few in between, in the grand scheme of things, or the majority of the populace who feels wronged or feels like they're fighting an uphill battle against this entity, these people. You and I, we're big bad people. Yeah. So I think they speak to the majority of the demographic, which will drive traffic. Plus, controversy sells. People loves a good story. Like, I mean, that story of the tenant happened right before July 1st in Quebec, right? So, of course, it's the moving day. It's a housing crisis. It's everything. Then it was forgotten. I mean, ultimately, she got used for attention. Yeah. Nothing came out of it.
And that's another thing. That's a really great point that you're bringing up. Like, these people, they don't even realize that they are being used.
100%.
They're being used to make money and drive traffic to their website. That's ultimately what they're being used for.
100%. And ultimately, I mean, I don't know, maybe I have a little bit more shame than her, but I mean, I wouldn't want my face plastered all over the world, Quebec, saying that I'm broke, I can't make rent, and I'm now homeless and living in my car. Yeah. Have a bit of shame, a little bit of pride, perhaps.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
But ultimately, look, that was her decision. But I think the media, incredibly disingenuous. This journalist, when he contacted me, he had a narrative and an attitude that it was, I'm in the wrong from the get-go. And I knew no matter what I tell him, this is going to air and I will be demonized. So
did you try, and what was your attitude when you're speaking to this journalist? Did you try and sell him and maybe schmooze him? Or were you kind of like, no, I see what this is, and you kind of got defensive? What was your reaction?
Initially, he tried to call. It was a number I had never seen. And then I get a text message saying, I'm Yves Poirier de TVA Nouvelle. Now, I know Yves Poirier is one of the biggest journalists in Quebec for French-speaking media. But I wasn't sure it was really that. It could have been a prank, could have been anyone, right? Yeah. So I tell him, look, any questions be directed to my business email address. I wanted to see, where does the email come from? Yeah. Lo and behold, I'm at the gym. I'm at the Club 20, pumping some iron. And then I get the email from the domain tva.ca. So I knew it was real from the get-go. Okay. I was stern. I just told him, that version of the story is false. I have an agreement that has been signed. Maybe it was not mentioned. Yeah. So those are the only comments I'll make. I knew that if I gave him any kind of munition or got defensive or tried to plea anything, he'd twist it. I mean, I've had positive media coverage before for business, for BizBiz. I've been in a newspaper, full page. I've been on TV as well. Yeah. And I realized that even though they're trying to be nice and positive, they always twist your words a little bit. Yeah, they do. Yeah. So if they do that on a positive note, what would they do for a negative note? Hence why I refuse to give more information than not. And lo and behold, I mean, that's what it was.
And the reason I'm asking that question, I guess it kind of goes to, we'll get into politics a little bit now. Yeah. There's a gentleman that I work with. He doesn't work at our company, but he's a business associate, I would call him. He worked at a Crown Corporation, and he worked on the finance side. And he got to see Radio Canada. Yeah. He ran a lot of the finances. And basically, so whenever the Liberal power gets into party, they give more money for biased, I don't want to call it biased media coverage. Well, it is biased media coverage, but they give a lot of money so that they get favorable media coverage. They're not going to say that, but that's what it is. So right now, like, politically speaking, coming up for the next election, which I'm not sure when it's going to be because the NDP situation and all that kind of stuff.
Well, now the Bloc Québécois is going to provide the supply and confidence.
So there you go. Yeah. But if I'm Pierre Poilievre, I want the media on my side. So from a moral standpoint, I think he's doing the right thing because CBC has let down Canadians. They have a narrative to push, and they're not doing a good job of actually covering the news. They're pushing a narrative, and whatever they can do to twist, spin, to push that narrative, they're going to keep doing it. But if I'm him, politically speaking, I think it's a bad move because why would you go up against the biggest media corporation in Canada when just keep your mouth shut, and then when you come into power, which is most likely going to be the case in November, where the Conservatives are going to come into power, why not sit down, have a conversation with them? I'm not saying it would work. It probably wouldn't, because I think our Canadian institutions have been infected by this woke mind virus.
Oh, yeah.
But money talks. So why not just say, like, keep your mouth shut, shut up, get into power. You have bad media coverage at the beginning, but then, you know, basically just give them money, give them more money than what the Liberals are giving, and you can get favorable media coverage. Because if you look at read a history book, I would debate, would say the most important thing about a political party's rise to power is propaganda. And whether you want to call it propaganda / news media, whatever it is, but having a marketing team behind you, and the marketing team being CBC, I mean, if I'm him, that's what I would do. And I'm not saying it's right, but I'm just saying he'll be able to accomplish a lot more if the media is on his side. And I will tip my hat off to Justin Trudeau. I don't like his policies at all. But politically, what he's done with CBC is very smart, because he gets excellent media coverage.
That he does.
Not up until recently, because it's like the end of his tenure. But you know what I mean? So it's basically like I just disagree with how Pierre Poilievre's going about this, and he's letting his ego get in the way too much.
Probably. And ultimately, he's a politician. I like the guy.
And he's not wrong.
But he's a politician.
He is. But right? He's also like, what he's saying about CBC, he's not wrong about what he's saying. But pick your battles. And I think it's a bad battle to go up against the media machine. I don't think that's a battle that he'll win over a long time.
It's a good point. But here, I'll play the devil's advocate. Okay, and let's use Trump as an example, because Poilievre is often compared to the Maple MAGA, right? That's what they call him, Maple MAGA.
I haven't heard that, the Maple MAGA.
Maple
I like that.
MAGA, yeah. Which I find hilarious, because it's not even a freaking third as intense as Trump, but whatever. It's Canadian politics. It's still boring ultimately, right? Yeah. But let's look at the 2016 cycle with Trump, right? He had the media against him 100%. However, it gave him so much airtime. Free airtime, much more than at the time it was Clinton, right?
Yeah,
much
Hillary
more than
Clinton,
Clinton, right? So talk good about me, talk bad about me, but as long as you're talking about me, you're in people's mind.
Yep.
But on top of that, he played on that specific endeavor. He played on the fact that the media is the establishment hates me. Look at all the negative coverage. The more negative coverage he had, the more it empowered and emboldened him, right? So going against the media, if you use them for your advantage or to your advantage, would be perhaps a good choice. My fear is that if he tries to please CBC, it won't work. You know, like you said, they're infected with the woke mind virus. That is, they're leftist as leftist gets. They're never going to like him. And that's a problem I see a lot of politicians do.
But you think even if they gave him a pile of money, that it doesn't matter?
It doesn't, because for them it's ideological. So if we look at it this way, a lot of politicians fall for this fallacy, is that they will first polarize their base to get elected, which is a very, very smart thing. I think we spoke about it last time a little bit, but you want super fans. You don't want to please everyone. You want super fans because they will give you or buy more from you or support you more than anyone else. So politicians do that. They will segment the population enough to get elected. But once they're elected, they're trying to appease and please everyone. But ultimately what it does is it disenfranchises their base, who feels like, wait a second, you've like flip-flopped. And the other side doesn't like you anyways. They're not going to start liking you magically, maybe a few percentage, but no one is going to start supporting you randomly like that. So people are so polarized, right? So you'd probably gain more with sticking to your base. Now, with Poilievre trying to please CBC, they hate you. They hate you already. You are everything they stand against. For them, they see themselves as a righteous, it's a moral battle. They see themselves as a pillar of society to begin with, right? The fourth pillar. So for them, they're God. They're holier than God. And what they say, you know, carries and safeguards democracy. How often do you hear the media say, we safeguard democracy? They see themselves as freaking deities. It's ridiculous.
Did you ever see the time where, I think this was during the Harper days, where basically he said, he's like, well, the Canadian citizens, the taxpayers, have a right to know how much the executives are making. CBC would not release that data, and they claimed that it would be an attack against democracy if they showed how much these executives were making. I mean, it's not a well-run institution. It's like, and if it was a privately run institution and taxpayers weren't subsidizing this business, I mean, it would not exist. They'll say differently, but that's absolutely the truth. Like, they wouldn't be around. And I guess I get both sides, and that's a really good point you're bringing up. No matter how much money you throw at them, if they're ideological, it's not going to change them anyways. But also too, maybe Polyev is counting on the fact that because legacy media is on the decline, that maybe they won't have as much of an impact once he comes into power. But you'd be surprised. And I used to think that legacy, like I don't watch legacy media, you don't watch legacy media, Shamar doesn't watch legacy media. Like most millennials, we don't watch legacy media because we know it's just a crock of shit.
Yeah.
So we get our news from podcasts, and we get our news from like a lot of different places. I would imagine it's the same thing for you. But it's like, you'd be surprised at how many people, or especially the boomers, which is a big subset of the population, still listen to legacy media. We run ads on CJD. We run ads on TSN 690. This is radio. I did not think it was going to be this successful. We get a lot of business, and it's always the same demographic. It's 50 years old and plus, English speaking, generally speaking males. You know, you get a couple females too, and they'll be like, I heard you on TSN. They always have the same voice. I heard you on TSN 690. They've lived in the same house in the West Island for the past 30 years. But that's a very... I love that. That's our demographic. They're very profitable, and I'm just looking at it from a business standpoint. They're good, loyal clients. They're good people. But so the point I'm trying to make is the legacy media, as much as we don't listen to it, the boomers still do. It's still a big subset of the population that can influence elections. So I guess that's the point I'm just trying to make. I don't know if it's necessarily a good idea to like fully be going up against them. You might not win them over, but just keep your mouth shut. Maybe you won't get as much negative news coverage. Do you know what I mean?
I get what you're saying. At the same time, I think the people who are going to vote for Polyev are people that are so tired of the status quo, so tired of the last 10 years of Trudeau.
Yes.
That for them, they're like, and I think they realize as well the media is biased, right?
Yeah, it absolutely is.
So they don't necessarily listen to what the media has to say. I hear what you're saying, and it makes sense as well. I think it's a very traditional.
I'm talking politically. Take it's like it's a strategy. It's not.
It's a strategy. You're right. I would go. I'm no politician. I'm not running for office, and I would get disqualified day one if I try to run for office. All right.
Yeah. I think you and me both.
I am unelectable.
Well, that's why I like having you on a podcast, because you speak your mind, and there's a lot of people that I can get on a podcast, and like we've had a lot of great guests and stuff, but I prefer speaking to guests who will actually speak their mind, and they're not thinking in the back of their head like, should I say this or should I not say this? You know what I mean? That it makes for a good conversation. It's kind of like when The Rock went on Joe Rogan, and he's a big star, and I get what he's doing, but he didn't take a stand on anything. So it's not good content. It's a boring conversation.
It's neutral. It's political.
It is. And I get it. He has all these brand deals all over the place, and he's just thinking dollar signs at the end of the day.
I don't have any sponsors yet.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, but it's like, but where do you see? And so let's kind of take this. We haven't looked at. We're not even going to touch these notes. I know it.
Probably not.
Let's take this into censorship. So right now, there's a lot of the powers that be and the governments. They are clearly trying to regulate the internet, the internet's media coverage, because they know that legacy media is on the decline. That's why they're passing all these laws and legislation on the internet. This is not just particular or specific to Canada. This is the West in general. I would say the world in general, actually. I mean, if you go to China you're getting specific media coverage. And how dangerous do you think it is to live in under a censored regime?
Crisis level dangerous.
Why?
I'm talking about violent uprising needed if it ever gets to that. The problem, it won't hear, right? Why? If you can't speak your mind, if you cannot have discourse, you lead automatically to authoritarianism. It will get to a point where there is a dictatorship, or at least a monopoly on what you can think. If you cannot, discourse is needed because ultimately there are two sides. I don't think anyone holds the absolute truth, right? I have my views, you have your views, you have your views.
Yeah.
I don't think we're necessarily one of us is right. I think there's an ultimate truth somewhere along the line.
We need a yin and a yang.
We do.
And that's what both sides need to understand. Like, there's nothing wrong with having a Republican, a Democrat, a liberal, a conservative. At the end of the day, I think we need each other.
We do.
Because it creates balance.
100%.
And, but sorry, I cut you off
without that discourse, without the ability to challenge that. We saw it during COVID, and there's a freaking sensitive topic. It was completely forbidden to speak anything or to question so much as the official narrative.
Yes.
You were labeled all kinds of things, deplatformed and censored.
Yeah.
And sometimes even worse, jailed.
Yeah.
the reality is this: perhaps we actually would have saved lives had we had that discourse. Because some people, it's like, the good old story of like the first person who said the earth was not flat, it was actually round. You know what I mean? Well, maybe at the time the narrative was everyone, the earth is flat. I don't know if that was the truth or the case, right?
I think it was.
But nonetheless, this person was a heretic, right?
Yeah.
He was saying crazy shit, and he's probably burned at a stake. But the reality turned out to be true.
Yeah.
We want to let as much information out there, and we have to trust that people can filter the right and the wrong. And ultimately, it's not the government's job to filter the information for you.
And this is the battle that people are having right now. Do you want to elect a political party that thinks they know best, or do you want to elect a political party that wants to let the people decide? And if we live in a true democracy, they are our servants, or they're supposed to be, at least. Is that what it is in practice? No, it's not. Absolutely
not at all. People are screaming, "Govern me harder, Daddy."
Yes,
that's what they want.
Yeah, but this is why there's such a rise in populism right now. And for those that don't know, populism, simply put, it's essentially the average person doesn't feel heard anymore, and they have a resentment against the elites. And right now, I don't think people don't even realize this. I think it's a lot more elites against the rest of the population. I don't want to call them poor, because not everyone's poor, but it's the elites and everyone else, as opposed to being left and right. And I think once people actually start to wake up to this, all hell is going to break loose. And if we take the example of the UK, and this is, Andrew Tate said this. He says a lot of stuff I don't agree with, but he says a lot of stuff that I do agree with. And he said that in the UK. And he goes, once the population wakes up and realizes that the Muslims, the newly immigrated Muslims, and the rest of the population have a lot more in common than they think, and it's actually the elites against them as opposed to whites against the Muslims, shit's going to change. And I think it's slowly starting to work through the minds of everybody that there is an international agenda. I really believe this. And some people are like, "Oh, you're being conspiratorial."
I believe it as well.
And there's more and more substance and facts. There are international institutions. Our institutions of the West are threatened. And the powers that be are doing everything they can to keep everything in place. They're fighting a losing battle. And how does this transition remains to be seen. But I don't know, there's a lot of news stuff. And if we just go on like Trump versus Kamala, there could absolutely be a civil war here. Like, absolutely. And I'm not saying that lightly. I honestly think or even worse, like, had he died when he got shot, bro, I'm telling you, man, like, people don't some people who are going, "Oh, I wish he," like, who are not Trump supporters, "Oh, I wish they didn't miss. I wish he got hit." I don't think you realize what would have happened had he got shot.
We came probably within a fraction of an inch from complete breakdown of U.S.
And if you don't think that there was going to be like a civil war, or at least like an uprising, you're nuts.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Or you don't understand what's going on right now.
People are so polar. I think the world right now is teetering on the edge of a lot of things, right? There's a lot of tension everywhere.
Yes.
And people are primed up. And on top of that, add the inflation, add the economy, people are really at their wits' end.
Yes.
And it's when people are backed in the corner
and they have nothing to lose
that they're the most dangerous.
Yes.
And especially if you even push it further, there's more and more of a disenfranchised young male demographic, single, childless, relationshipless, not married, right? And that are becoming more squeezed financially. And these guys are the dangerous guys.
Yes.
Ultimately, that's
they have nothing to lose.
They have nothing to lose.
They're like, they're like, they work. And this kind of goes back to like what we were talking about earlier. I actually empathize with them. It's like, hey, what happened to this American dream, this Canadian dream? I go to work every day. I work hard, especially like blue collar guys. I work hard. I go to work every fucking day. I can't afford anything. I can't buy a house. I can barely afford to eat. I can't get a car. Like, the taxes are through the roof. How do we fix this? That's a whole other can of worms.
But there was a unspoken social contract, right? Do the right thing, and you'll live at least a decent life. And now that's
breaking.
Impossible. I think it's broken already.
Yeah, I would agree.
100%. And people really don't know what to do anymore.
Yeah.
And I know you wrote down the interest rates and whatnot, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
that's not going to fix anything.
That's not going to fix shit.
No.
And the printing is like, for me, that's my favorite thing. You know, people are not realizing, yeah, but you know, he didn't raise the taxes. No, but he printed a shit ton of money.
Yeah.
It's the same.
And if you're not an asset holder, you're
screwed.
It's a hidden tax that a lot of people.
100%.
I say this all the time. And actually, one of my theories is, if you actually look at kind of like the breakdown of society, it's a slow burn. But it's really been exacerbated since 2008. So they had to save the financial system. And there's an argument of, well, if they didn't do what they did, who's to say the alternative would have been like, what would that have been like had the financial system actually collapsed? That's a great question. We don't know the answer to that. So what's better? But and once they start to realize this, I don't think a lot of people will, because you have to have a pretty good grasp of financial markets and how, you know, capital flows and stuff like that. But since 2008, if we look at the gap between the rich and the poor, it's gotten massive, because the more you print money, and I know you know this, it's like it's going to benefit asset holders. There's asset inflation, which we've had here in Canada with real estate. That's a perfect example. And people who don't own assets fall further and further behind. It's a hidden tax that people don't understand. So they just see the tax on their paycheck. But for example, if inflation is 10% a year and you're only getting a 2% raise, that's an 8% tax.
There you go. And it affects everyone, mostly the middle class.
Yes.
Right? So the middle class, aside from the primary residence, don't really own anything else.
Yeah.
Right. The poor, I mean, they're already screwed.
Yeah.
And when I say the rich, I don't mean, look, you have some assets, we all do, but we're talking about the people at the 1% of the 1%.
Yeah.
These guys are the ones over the last 4 or 5 years that have more than freaking X'd their net worth.
Yeah.
Right. It goes back to unrealized gains, but
yeah.
Nonetheless, inflation is a hidden tax.
Yeah.
It's much more palatable than saying we're going to have to raise your taxes.
Correct.
Right? And people don't realize it.
Yeah. And governments inflate away their debt. This has been, I haven't gotten around to reading it, but Ray Dalio's book, and every single empire that rises and falls towards the end. So, and it's just like any other company. This is just a cycle of humans. We're imperfect. So you work your ass off. You have success, and once you have success, you want to enjoy it a little bit. Why would you keep your nose to the grindstone? And I don't blame them. So you get fat, you get lazy, you're not innovative anymore. There's all these things that start to happen, and there's another guy or one of your competitors that's still on the side that wants to kick your fucking ass. And those are the people that come up. So, but at the end of every empire, so let's look at the U.S., and if you look at the past, look at the Romans, you look at the Brits, the first thing they start to do is devalue their currency, because they're too stretched thin. They're spending money. They're fighting wars that they can't afford. Yeah. Well, they're like, crap, we can't afford to pay this off, so let's just devalue our currency. Yeah. And as you devalue the currency, the people that have all the assets, they don't really care because you have an asset. So the asset just gets more expensive. Yeah. But the people that don't have assets, all of a sudden, they have less purchasing power. So I'll just go back to my main point. I really think that this problem started in 2008. They didn't let capitalism actually take its natural path. It's not something you can avoid. You can prolong it. You can kick the can down the road, but eventually shit's going to snap.
Something's got to give.
It's going to break.
Yeah. And, you know, it's society. Look, maybe we can draw a parallel with how people are becoming more obese. And you're going to catch my drift here. Yeah. It's easy to eat a shit ton of food. It's delicious. It's good.
That's great.
I love it. Like, I murk a tub of Ben & Jerry's ice cream every week. Ooh. I murk that shit. Ooh. But I also go to the gym every day. Yeah. And I do try to watch what I eat. And so do you.
Look good.
Vice versa, buddy. Vice versa. Yeah. You're like fine wine. You're aging well. So now the reality is this. It's not always enjoyable to do the right thing. It's sacrifices. And correct. You played sport as well, right?
Yep,
you played some sports. Yep. So you understand that you have to sacrifice. It's painful, but it's the right thing. Yeah. Go back to 2008. There was pain on the horizon. There was no choice. It was the end of a cycle. We were supposed to have a little bit of a bust. Yeah. But people, the same reason that most of society is getting fat, I think we're becoming a little lazy. And it's, our lives have become comfortable to the point where we chase quick or short-term pleasure. We don't sacrifice anymore. Yeah. So we put a Band-Aid on it and kick the can down the line. And now, same thing in 2000 with COVID. We put a major Band-Aid over it. We printed more money in those COVID years than any other time before. Yeah. And we screwed everything over. But instead of, again, facing the reality, we're kicking it down the road.
Facing the music,
It's the people that take Ozempic. Instead of putting into work and suffering a little bit for a result, they take a short-term solution. But who's to know? And nobody knows right now. Maybe 20 years down the line, taking Ozempic is going to be a freaking killer. We don't know, but you took a freaking
It probably
Band-Aid.
is. And this is something that's been on RFK's, Robert F. Kennedy's platform. He's been talking about it a lot. And that guy's in tremendous shape.
Insane, man, that guy.
Yeah, and there's a video of
American fit again.
Yeah.
Healthy again.
It's true, though. But
I agree.
If you, it's so important to have your body right. If you have your body right, you're most likely going to have your mind right. Mm-hmm. It's such an important thing. And so he was talking about it. Back when he was growing up, I think it was 4% of children had diseases. It's a very low number that had problems. Today it's 60. This is in America. It's not as bad in Canada, but it's getting worse.
We're getting there.
Now, why is this happening? There's a whole slew of
seed
reasons.
Oils, cut that shit out.
Yeah, there's a pile of stuff that's happening, but that's again, it kind of comes. I don't think it's a problem that the government can fix.
It's
but
not
I think
for the government to fix.
But it's something that we can raise, that people can raise awareness for, and it just comes back to, again, our society. I find it's way too much about short-term pleasures as opposed to sacrifices and doing what's right and what's your duty. So, like, I'll give you an example. One of the reasons why I haven't drank in almost 3 months now. It was getting in the way of my life.
Wow.
And
congrats, by the way.
Thank you. And I was coming into work, and I still work and stuff, but I kept saying to myself, dude, you're running at like 70% capacity right now. Yeah. What would you be like if you can run at 100% capacity? And I knew that the path I was on, if I continued down that path on my deathbed, I wouldn't be very happy with myself. And so it just goes back to like what people, they need to stop this victimhood mentality, and at the end of the day, no one fucking cares about you. Like,
and that's a realization a lot of people need to have, and sometimes sadly never have.
Yeah.
Nobody gives a fuck.
Nobody cares about you.
No. Aside from your mom, your dad, and maybe a couple close friends.
Yeah.
And even that, they're aroused to jealousy sometimes.
Yes.
Okay. Nobody fucking cares.
And no one's actually, of all people, the government is going to help you out of this mess.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
They're there for you.
So it's like society has become, in the West, we've become soft and we've become entitled, and we're just getting primed up for, man, if there's a war and they come to the West, like imagine a savage Russian army come to the West.
We're screwed.
They're going to fuck us up. And of it's all okay. Things,
we got equality, dude. We got DEI, man.
But it's like, you know what I mean? Like all these distractions and stuff. And it's just like, if they imagine, and of all things, the most important, I think, if we can't as a country answer the question, what does it mean to be Canadian? We're doomed.
The problem is this: I can't even answer that right now.
I can't either.
Who are we?
I can't either,
no
man.
Identity.
That's a problem. And people are, Curtis, you're fucking going on a rant again. No, this is a serious issue about society.
Even Timmy's is freaking American now.
Yeah.
What the fuck? Our crown jewel is gone.
It's like, what happened to being patriotic? Are we a perfect society? No, we're not a perfect society. Have we wronged?
Patriotic now is considered to be far right. Don't be patriotic.
It's
man.
Crazy.
It's far right.
And if kids
flying the flag is far right
it's
too.
It's crazy. And if kids are getting brainwashed in schools that their country's bad, which is the case, this is happening in educational institutions today at universities and stuff. It's not right to be teaching that your country is a bad country. Have they done things that are wrong? Of course they have. Racism's not right, native rights, all that stuff. I'm not saying that we shouldn't acknowledge the wrongs that we've done, but why do all these immigrants want to keep coming to the West? We have values, or did have values, that people admire and want to adhere by. Mm-hmm. So, like, stop. I'm not going to feel bad. I'm not going to feel guilty about being a white male. Stop telling me I should be feeling guilty.
You're going to have to flagellate yourself. Okay.
But I think this is the issue with a lot of men, in particular, growing in like a man, like the point you said earlier, a young man who has nothing to lose, who has nothing, and doesn't know what he stands for, is a dangerous man.
That's how you get extremism.
Yes, and this is what's happening right now. So that's my rant. But it's like I don't like what I see right now.
I think it's also, so I feel like the fabric of society is being broken, but most importantly, it's being power and authority is being concentrated inside the hands of only the government. So 100 years ago, there was God, family, and country.
Yeah.
That was really the order people would put it in.
Those are great values.
Your family came before the country,
Yeah.
and your God,
Yeah.
whoever it may be,
Yeah.
came before family, right?
Yeah.
That's, you worship your God, and then you take care of your family.
Yeah.
And the order can change a little bit. But those are three alternate sources of authority.
Mm-hmm.
Your church or your place of worship, that's authority.
Mm-hmm.
Your family, that's authority. As a father over a family or a husband over a family, you control and you have authority over a unit, right? Even your community was a source of authority. People were much more closer together. And government was kind of in the back. Sure, they have authority, but they did not have the monopoly.
They were there to
authority.
just protect your rights, more or less.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Nowadays, we've broken down religion. And I'm not a religious guy, but I do believe that some religion, or at least some values of religion, are not bad for society.
I agree.
So they've broken down religion. Now being Christian or being religious is seen as being a cuckoo, a lunatic.
Yeah.
All right. Then they've broken down the family unit.
Yeah.
First of all, we're having no kids.
Yeah.
People are not getting married anymore. And we're told that you have to prioritize your career or anything else. You have to prioritize being, you know, a boss lady or like a freaking, a freaking whatever.
Yeah, boss ass bitch.
Boss ass bitch. Over anything else. So we've demonized the family now.
Yeah.
So much to a point where, and I see it, people who have family, you know, the woman or even the father is being asked, well, why did you do this? Or, you know, what happened? You know, was it a mistake? You know, like what happened to just wanted to have a freaking family to begin with? But what happens with that? I think the byproduct is that ultimately the authority gets centralized into this faceless, nameless entity, the government.
Yeah.
There you go. And now they have the monopoly over. And we saw during COVID with the lockdowns, with the denouncing your neighbors, with families turning against one another, and banning certain members from, you know, joining for Thanksgiving, for example, or Christmas. We've seen what happens when those sources, alternate sources of authority, are challenged and demolished. It creates a all-powerful government authority. And I think that's one very, very dangerous reality for any free people, for any free country. You cannot have the same way the US or even Canada, our institutions are divided between, you know, there's checks and balances between judiciary and executive and legislative, so that not one single entity or individual has the concentration of power.
Can go rogue and
exactly. But we're seeing that right now happening in society. And I think that's a huge threat to our way of life.
Yeah.
We need to be able to challenge authority.
Do you think this is intentional? Do you think
Yes.
Do you think this play by the government over all these years is intentional, or do you think this is just a byproduct of
That's a good question.
Like, I don't for me, I'll start. I don't think it's actually intentional. I think it's just a byproduct of stress in society, because there is stress in society. And I think it's like the saying, never let a crisis go to waste. And I think the fact that if they keep fear-mongering people and keep, you know, which a lot of times the government are the ones who are actually creating the problems. So they create a problem and they go, oh, look, we have a solution. It's like, well, you created the problem in the first place. But the average person isn't smart enough to understand that. Of course. And then, so I don't think it's like actually like it's a 30-year plan where they actually want to like hijack society. But I think naturally it's just because things are breaking and things are more difficult. I think they're just taking it as an opportunity to have more influence on how society works. And again, we're not going to know the answer.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. You know, one of my employee, my chief technology officer, who's fairly well connected in government, he always uses the same point. He's like, never chalk up to malice what incompetency or what could be chalked up to incompetency. And it's like with government, it's 99% of the time just straight incompetency.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily malice.
Yeah.
I abide for like typical bureaucrats. At the top, no, these people got elected. They're too smart. A lot of people say Trudeau's incompetent. I agree. But at the same time, I wonder, maybe he's just incredibly competent at destroying certain things that we hold near and dear. It could also be, now, who does he serve or for what avail, what power, what reason? I'll just be speculating here. Yeah. You mentioned something also interesting about people. You said the average person is not smart enough to realize what's going on. And it's actually on a bell curve.
Or maybe I shouldn't say that. I think they don't want to know what's going on.
Oh, that's a good point too, right? A lot of people rather, you know,
they have their family, they have their life. They're like, you know what, this is too much for
Ignorance
me.
Is bliss, right? Ignorance is bliss. And
I'll rephrase what I said because I don't want to, I'm kind of insulting people. I think it's more that they don't want to know.
So that's good. but I'll insult the people.
Okay.
Okay, put the blame on me. I agree with what you said initially. I think the average person is not necessarily smart enough. And it's not that they're not smart enough, actually. Intelligence is obviously on a bell curve, right?
Yeah.
100 being the mean.
Yeah.
IQ we're talking about. Sure,
Yeah.
there's a lot of types of intelligence. Just use the basic one, IQ. But here's the issue. And again, go back to COVID. That was super interesting. University educated people with a bachelor degree were much more likely to abide by government restrictions,
Yeah.
to follow government mandates,
Yeah.
and to go with the narrative than people that had PhDs or people that were freaking retarded.
Yeah.
Right? I'm in the retarded category, by the way. Right?
Yeah.
So I was not going with anything.
Yeah.
And I mean, I can openly say this. Okay, we defied every single measure. All
Yeah.
right? We held some freaking office parties. It was a great time, right? We just slept at the office instead because it was a curfew.
Yeah.
Cinco de Mayo was mucho bueno. So, but what I find interesting is that the psychology behind it is the following. People who are average think that they're too smart to get duped, to get taken advantage of. And especially when you look towards people that have bachelor's degree, they assume that their intelligence is way above the mean, way above the average. And they go with the whole, I can't get scammed. I can't get fooled. I'm too smart for this, which is the easiest kind of person to fool, is the person who doesn't think they can get fooled.
They're not skeptical about anything.
Exactly. And they overstate their ability to rationalize
Yeah.
and to analyze situations.
Yeah.
The dumbasses like me, these people, well, we tend to just always question authority to begin with because we never really relied on institutions. We've always done our own thing.
Yeah.
And the PhD realized that they're so smart that oftentimes they think they're not so smart.
Yeah.
See, when you're incredibly intelligent,
You're smart enough to know what you don't know.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. So
Yeah.
they're much more careful about making
Yeah.
their mind up, and they rather get it.
And they have more humility. They have more, because like the higher up you get in, the more you excel at anything, the more you realize, wow, there's a lot I don't know. And if you can be humble enough to actually accept that, you're absolutely right. That's a great point that you're bringing up.
Yeah. So I think that was regarding, we talk about the average person not being smart enough. I think that was the idea behind it.
Yeah.
But going back to what you're saying, we were talking about something else, man.
I don't know. We've gone on a lot of tangents right now.
As usual.
This is interesting though, but it's like, I don't know. It's kind of like a dark, let's go more on the positive side. So it's like, we always actually forget it. What do you think's next? Because there's like, let's just look at the world right now.
Yeah.
So there's China-U.S. relation tensions. Taiwan manufactures basically all of the West microchips, and it's not if, it's when China goes to take over Taiwan.
Yeah.
We have Russia, Ukraine, and the fact that, and I've said this before, Russia made it crystal clear. It's the equivalent of China putting up arms in Mexico, which is right next to the United States.
Yeah.
That would not be accepted.
And
Russia has been saying this for 30 years. And what ended up happening was basically the U.S. said, no, we're going to make Ukraine part of NATO. Russia said, we cannot accept that. We've been telling you this for 30 years. Oh, well, we're going to go ahead and do it anyways. Boom. Now there's conflict going on there. And it's essentially, it's not Ukraine against Russia. This is the United States against Russia.
Of course.
And
I would say it's NATO against Russia, or the West versus
but
Russia.
NATO, but the West. That's
West, yeah.
more accurate. You're right. And I think this is another thing. And I've been aggregating data on a lot of the podcasts that I listen to. The media is not covering how close we actually are to a nuclear war.
Damn close.
They're not like this is, and again, I'm not a geopolitical expert, but a lot of people are saying like this, we're closer to nuclear war today than during the Cuban Missile Crisis. And this is not just coming from one source. These are multiple sources. And so back into politics right now, if I think Kamala, because there's a debate going on tonight, Kamala represents the military industrial complex. Why did Dick Cheney just endorse Kamala Harris? This guy's a warmonger.
Of course.
Why did they go into Iraq? Everyone knows that was a crock of shit. He's a warmonger. Why did he just endorse Kamala? I think she could be easily controlled. And I think also, too, the fact that she doesn't really have a lot of experience, I think she's going to want to project strength. And I think she's much more likely to actually entice Russia to she's having her in power. An escalation of war is much more likely versus Trump. And people go, well, Trump's this, Trump's that, he's a lunatic. Well, we already have the A/B test that was in place. We've had 4 years of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. We had 4 years of Trump. Trump was actually the first president in I don't know how many years to not go to war. So if I'm playing poker and I have to put my chips somewhere, I'm going to go on Trump to actually not go to war with Russia. And so some people, then you have basically other people saying that, well, Russia for I don't know how many years, but hundreds of years, they have, and it's called an expansionist mind thinking. So they're always trying to expand. Whether that's true or not, I have no idea. So some people are like, well, no, we need to kind of support Ukraine because once they take Ukraine, they're just going to move on and take over other stuff, which is probably correct. So again, I don't know what the hell to do. But I'm just saying right now as it stands, I don't really want to have war. I don't want to have nuclear war. And like I've been talking about this with my girlfriend. It's just like I wouldn't be surprised at all if we live through a world war.
I mean, we've lived through 2008. We've lived through COVID. We've lived through the housing crisis. I mean, it's only right that millennials also go through a war at this point, man.
And I think a war, this is going to sound really cold, it's terrible, but it's just like wars reset a lot of things.
A good culling.
No, but like a good old fashioned, it resets a lot of stuff.
And it's something I've been saying for a very long time.
And it goes, I'll just say this one last thing,
sorry.
And I'll let you go because I've been rambling on for a while now, but and Joe Rogan said this, it's like strong men create good times create weak men create hard times create strong men. And we're at a point now where good times create weak men. If we go to war, and it's basically, let's say the allies, so China, Russia, the BRIC, whatever, we'll call it the BRIC countries, go to war against the West, and the West right now are fighting amongst each other, and we don't know what we stand for, that's not a war I'm really interested in fighting, because I don't think we're going to win. And also, too, with nuclear power everywhere, well, who wins?
Nobody except the people in the bunkers.
Yeah.
I don't know. Do you have a bunker?
I don't have a bunker.
I don't have a bunker. I've been saying this for a very, very long time. In the grand scheme of thing, I think we need a huge crisis, but a real crisis. And here's the reason. We need that reset at this point.
Yeah.
Like you said, times right now are so easy that we've created a weak, pudgy society.
Yes.
People nowadays are fighting about pronouns.
It's crazy.
This is their war horse. This is the hill they want to die on.
I agree.
Right? If we had a famine, an actual disease that killed people, not COVID, okay? Come on.
Yeah.
A war, but some form of tragedy where people's day-to-day life is in jeopardy. The food that they eat's in jeopardy. Their housing is in jeopardy.
Yeah.
People would start putting their focus on what's actually important.
Yes.
And they would have to surmount to get tough again.
Yes.
You look at the babushka from the Soviet Union, okay, who was born in the 1900s, right? She doesn't give two fucks about your pronouns.
No.
Because guess what? She had bigger things. Look, I'll use my great-grandmother as an example, right? I was lucky enough to meet her, right? She died when I was like 7 or 8 years old. And I remember vividly going to a diner with her. And after eating our food, she took those little packs of ketchup and vinegar and mustard and the little goblets of milk and cream and shoved it in her purse. And I looked at her and I said, why are you doing this? And her answer was like, you've never lived through the ration of the war. Anything helps. And I was like, the ration? I was too young to understand. But she lived through World War II and the ration. She was a little girl, but still. Yeah. She realized that, those resources are scarce. Yeah. She doesn't care about your gender. She doesn't care about bullshit freaking, freaking painting a street in a rainbow color.
And now you have students that from like McGill or any privileged, first of all, if you go to like Harvard or any one of those institutions, you're privileged to begin with. Yes. And these people actually have the audacity to actually believe that they had a traumatic childhood.
Seriously, I know.
Like, oh, my parents were really strict with me. They made me study really hard, and they made me excel in sports, and that was really traumatic for me.
But even sports, you look at hockey nowadays.
Oh, dude, it's soft.
Geez, I think I saw this newspaper article maybe a year ago. I don't remember, but this kid complained to Hockey Quebec, because he didn't want to take showers with the boys. He was scared. And you know what they did?
Get over it.
Now you can't take showers anymore. Get over it. And I'm just like, Jesus fucking Christ. My coach back in the day would have freaking whipped my ass if I didn't take a shower after. It's part of being a hockey player. Shut the fuck up and
suck it up.
Suck it up.
Well, because life's not easy, man. There's a lot of things, and if we keep putting a spoon in everyone's mouths, you're not doing the kids a service. And like they have another rule that Hockey Canada implemented, and this is like and look at all the shit that just broke out with them with all the Me Too stuff. And anyway, I don't know all the details there, but it's like you're no better. And for them to implement I forget the exact name of the rule, but it's basically you have to play all of the players equally, which again creates entitlement. So if you're like a midget B or like at the lowest,
if you're house league, who gives
fine,
a fuck?
fine, go for it. But if you're like the top midget AAA, like, and you want to excel and you want to potentially make a career out of hockey, you got to understand that the best players are going to. You want to win.
There you go.
There's nothing
team
wrong.
Comes first anyway.
Yes, there's nothing wrong with playing to win. And you should be playing to win. And that's how I like to kind of operate my life. I play to win. Like, business is, yes, it gives me money, but ultimately what actually drives me the most is my competitive spirit.
Yes, exactly.
And a lot of people don't understand that. Like, why do you think someone who's already a billionaire keeps working? They have enough money they don't even know what to do with their money. It's about winning. It's a game.
100%.
And like, there's nothing wrong with this. And I think yes, there's pros and cons to anything, but having that mentality of that mentality is it's diminishing. We're losing that mentality. And it's these institutions are enabling us to have this victimhood mentality.
Yep. 100%. Look at hockey, and that's a good life lesson too. When you do play elite, you learn real quick. You're an individual part of a system.
Yes.
You play. We used to say it all the time. You play for the logo in front, not the name in the back. Right.
Yes.
I'm sure you've heard this 100 times.
You're probably not allowed to say that anymore.
Censored times two.
Yeah.
I'm censored again.
Sorry.
No, that's good. That's good.
Yeah.
But and that's a life lesson that's important as well, right?
Yes.
You don't come first. You're not freaking special, right?
Yes.
You're part of a unit. You put the unit first.
Yes.
But now if you force every player to play equally, right? Well, who cares if you practice hard? Who cares if you do anything?
Correct.
Good? It's like universal basic income.
Sounds like socialism.
Yeah, there you go. Socialism and hockey. God damn it, we've lost our ways.
Yeah.
But, and it's too bad because a lot of kids as well we're already in school, right? They're grading freaking assignments now based on
effort
and whatnot.
It's ridiculous.
And then people at least got a bit of life lessons and a little bit of education from their sports or after school activities, and now they can't even do that anymore. And families can't discipline their kids because the kids go to DPG, go to freaking child services, so you can't even raise your hand at them anymore. I'm not claiming, by the way, to beat your kids, but guess what? You still need to maintain authority over them.
You have to discipline your children. Yeah.
Look, when my son was born, again, this might get me canceled. Well, the first thing I did when my son was born was look up if it was still legal to physically discipline kids.
Yeah.
And how it works. In Canada, it's simple. Physical discipline is allowed from 2 to 12 years old, not before, not after, and it can't leave a mark and it cannot be abusive. But it is allowed. I'm not looking forward to doing so, but I know, like any young boy, he's going to want to push boundaries. You want him to be a man. You want him to be a man.
Yes.
And sometimes he's going to freaking stand up and not do the right thing and challenge the authority, either of his mother or mine or both, who knows. Yeah. And we need to be able to show him the right way.
Yes.
And this may include physical discipline. Yes. I'm for that, right?
Yes.
I was physically disciplined. Again, I wasn't beaten.
Me too.
But in hindsight, I'm happy. In a moment, I hated it.
It sucks.
It sucked.
But I was, if my dad was mad, I was afraid of him.
Exactly.
And that's healthy for society. Yes, I was afraid of him.
For him, yeah.
When he got fucking like, I'm not afraid of him today or anything, but like I wasn't like walking on eggshells all the time. But if there were certain times and I knew I was being a bad boy, and he came to the house, I was fucking petrified. Because I knew I deserved it.
That's right, and you deserve it.
Yes,
right?
But that keeps a boy, especially a boy, in line.
Yes, and boys, we will always push buttons and try to defy authority. It's part of our process of growing up and becoming a man of our own right.
Yes.
But all in all, in hindsight, that's the funny thing. I'm 33 now, but I look back and, I have much appreciation for my father. At the time that it happened, I absolutely didn't. But today I look back and it was the right thing. Because if he let me just dictate things as a little snot eater, I would have grown up to be a total fuck up.
Yeah.
Well, there's a lot of people in society perhaps that should have gone a little bit of a whoop ass at one point, right? And again, I'm not saying beat your kids freaking bloody here. No, that is wrong. Go to jail for that, right? Skip $200 straight to jail. Yeah. But skip go, I mean. But people have to have respect as well, and you see it in every sphere of society. I fly a lot. I fly a shit ton. We're talking maybe over 100, almost 130,000 miles a year. That's close to 200,000 kilometers of flying. And I see it now, the entitlement with flight attendant, not the flight attendant itself, the passengers towards the flight attendant, towards the airlines, towards the gate agent staff. People have turned into spoiled brats left and right. And I think that's another systemic downfall of society. And we encourage it. It goes back to the victimhood mentality. People are playing the victim and they believe they're entitled to everything.
But there's value in being the victim today.
Well, there is incredible value. Are you kidding? It's you win automatically. If you're a victim, we owe you the world, right? So, look, I don't know how we got to the point of child discipline, but I think, ultimately
we're going on some good tangents.
Yeah, Harris and Trump here. Question for you then.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, let's go.
Yeah, so for tonight, Trump versus Harris, do you think they're going to let him, because we know how he is, do you think they're going to let him go freely and speak his mind, or do you think he's going to get censored?
Which network is hosting the debate?
Do you know?
Jamie,
do you know?
If it's on, Jamie. If it's on CNN, it's ABC. I think the rules will be very similar to what CNN was. So if he keeps talking and rambling, they'll cut off his mic. Mm-hmm. But I think this is here's a question I have for you. Mm-hmm. How crazy is it that it's been 45 or 50 days that Kamala Harris has only given one sit-down interview? She's not answering any policy questions. Yeah. And the sit-down interview that she did was with Tim Walz. She spoke for 16 minutes. He spoke for 10 minutes, I think. They were obviously softball questions because it was on CNN. How crazy do you think it is that people are actually buying they're buying her spiel, and she hasn't answered any questions about anything? And I'll give you an example. The funniest part, she's been the border czar for the past 4 years. She takes care of the border. It's no secret that the border is an absolute mess. There are illegal immigrants coming in everywhere, and they just keep this incredible gaslighting that no, it's not us. This is because of Trump. He didn't build the wall properly, or whatever the hell they're trying to say. The fact that people are buying her spiel that she's going to be tough on the border is, to me, incredible. And the way I look at that is like, how gullible are you? Like really? We've seen what she's done for the past 4 years. And again, I'm not trying to take sides here. I'm just trying to actually be like, guys, wake up, open your eyes. You've had a Biden and a Harris presidency for the past 4 years. The border has never been this bad. Everyone knows that illegal immigrants are coming in. And that's not only just, you can have an argument of illegal immigrants, whatever, they come in, they supply cheap labor. Well, what about security? You don't think other countries are going to basically infiltrate the U.S. this way? You don't think Chinese people are going to come and infiltrate? You don't think terrorists are going to come and infiltrate the U.S. because it's so easy now? These are things that they're questions that people don't ask themselves. Mm-hmm. And they just basically, because they're so afraid to be called a racist.
Oh, yeah.
And it's not racist to have a strong border at all.
At all.
I don't want an illegal immigrant coming to my country and being able to get health care. I mean, why is that even controversial? What world do we live in?
At this point, let's just give a passport to anyone and everyone who applies for it. What's funny about the whole Trump-Harris thing, and like you said, there's a lot of gaslighting happening.
A lot.
The two things. First, whenever they say that Trump is going to start a war and end everything, I'm like, dude, he had 4 years in power.
Yes.
The world was doing better than ever before.
Yes.
You have data to show he did not. He's a dictator. He's going to destroy democracy. He's going to stay in power forever. Well, he lost an election and let it go. You have proof.
Yeah.
The one line that I like, not that people are using against Kamala, it's the whole, well, why don't you fix it right now? So we're going to lower grocery prices. Why don't you do it right now?
Yeah.
You're in power already. Why don't you do it right now? We're going to fix the border. Why don't you do it right now?
Yeah. Why haven't you done it yet?
And exactly. It's like, elect me and I will fix what I could fix right now. What kind of fucking person do you want?
Yes.
Really? Is that the deal? So you truly don't care about the country, you just care about your own personal interests.
I think that she is a dangerous person, and here's why I think she's dangerous. I think she's dangerous because she is a product of the system. She is a career politician. Mm-hmm. She represents the establishment.
Oh yeah.
And I don't know what's going on. I think Trudeau represents the establishment. I know he grew up with a silver spoon. I think that Kamala Harris represents the establishment. And I think a lot of left-leaning, left of center political groups represent the establishment, kind of like World Economic Forum type stuff. I don't know what they're up to. I think the fact that there are institutions such as NAFTA, North American Free Trade Agreement, such as NATO, are kind of under threat if a populist presidential candidate like Donald Trump gets elected, because this is the message in short. He's there to say, hey, the elites aren't listening to you. I'm here to represent you. I know you don't want to be sending money to Ukraine, as an example. I'm going to stop sending money to Ukraine to fight a war that has nothing to do with you.
Yeah.
That's his pitch. And people are resonating with that. A lot of times they can't articulate, but something about him when he talks, they resonate with what he says. She is a continuation of the establishment. She is a continuation of the military-industrial complex. And the military-industrial complex, for those that don't know, if you don't think the amount of money that's involved in going to war and fighting these forever wars is insane. Oh, yeah. And who makes all the money? It's not you. It's not the taxpayers making the money. It's the people. It's the publicly traded companies, the defense companies.
It's Nancy Pelosi.
Yeah, but they're the ones that are making all the money.
It is.
And it's very profitable to go to war.
Oh, hell yeah. It's one of the most profitable endeavor ever.
Because also, too, who's paying the bills? The government. The government doesn't check on anything.
There you go.
So they just pay you.
And money gets, like the Pentagon, their $1 trillion hole of a budget. I think Kamala is also very dangerous, probably for the same reasons you said, but also that cackle is freaking world ending. Okay, it's world ending. It's gonna kill me. It's gonna freaking kill me. So that's dangerous.
Yeah. Number one,
the cackle. Nah.
Yeah.
Since when did the left become pro-establishment? Weren't they like the anti-counterculture?
They used to be. Like I used to be in the 90s. I was a Bill Clinton Democrat. Really? And I haven't really changed
Is there anyone under the desk?
Yeah, I haven't changed my political views. It's the parties that have shifted further to the left.
Sure.
And why do you think there's so many career Democrat voters that are like, I don't recognize this party anymore. I can't vote for these people. It's a party of censorship. Mm-hmm. It's a party of war. And if you think that they're actually, they'll paint the right as a party like the Republicans. They'll paint them as the party of big business. Corporations and money in politics is a whole other fucking conversation.
Yeah. Well, we spoke about it last time. We despise crony capitalism.
Yes.
We don't want it.
No, we don't want that. But I think now that and a lot of people would agree, the conservatives in Canada, the Republicans in the U.S. represent the average person, or at least they're attempting to.
Yeah.
And why do you think it is that a lot of whenever you go to like a major metropolitan city, it's usually blue.
Yep.
And if you go into the outskirts of town, it's usually red. Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, look at the outskirts of town. All the manufacturing's been hollowed out. There's no more jobs. There's an opioid crisis. There's a fentanyl crisis. The elites and the Democrats, the people that go to universities, look down upon the people that work hard for a living, that are blue collars, that actually put food on your table. They look down on them. And I think that's what's starting to break. They think they know better than what the people in the outskirts of town, en région.
It's 100% what it is. And my favorite thing that I've seen, and this one blows my mind, there was this guy, we went around college campuses in the U.S., right? Again, all, I hate using the term white, wealthy, privileged kids, but they're asking about voter ID laws. It blows my mind that in the U.S. they cannot identify you in a lot of states to vote, right? In Canada, just so you know, whenever you go vote, you got to identify yourself.
Logic.
Right? Logic 101.
Yeah.
And they were asking them, do you think voter ID laws are bad? And most of them said, yes, it's racist. Why? Because, black neighborhoods, people that live there don't have IDs. And then the guy went into, Harlem and other normally black neighborhoods and said, hey, do you have ID? And everyone said, of course I have ID. Why would I not have an ID?
Yeah.
Like, well, this person at Columbia University thought that it was impossible for you to have an ID. It's all a bit like a politician who said that, certain people, from poor backgrounds, don't know how to use a computer, right? And they've said the same thing. We cannot do certain things online because they don't know how to use a computer. The elite mentality that these individuals display is unbelievable.
So arrogant.
It is pure arrogance.
So arrogant.
Pure arrogance. So, funnily enough, Estonia, which is a tiny little country that is not rich, it used to be a Soviet country, right? Now it's a Baltic country, it's free, but it used to be under the sphere of influence of the Soviet Union. I think it's something like over 98% of all government services are online. It's the most connected online government or country in the world. They vote online. I don't condone that, by the way. Not here.
Yeah.
Over there, small 1.5 million population.
Yeah,
okay.
easy. Yeah.
You know where everyone's voting anyways. Everyone's your freaking family.
Yeah.
But that just gives you an idea. They managed to do it, but here we'll never implement that because we say that people are too poor to freaking use a computer. What?
Yeah.
Anyways, so it's just the elite mentality I can't stand. It rubs me the wrong way.
Yeah, and there's a lot of you hit the nail on the head there. The I can't stand the elite mentality. Some people would look at me and be like, well, you're part of the elite.
But you're not.
I don't think like them. I don't want to be associated with them. it's like,
I mean, you're doing very well, but you're not.
Yeah.
You're not.
No, I'm not. I'm not
The
like-
elite, by the way, so we understand. We're talking to the people who can pick up the phone and call, say, Trudeau and say, look, listen, this is what I want you to do.
Yes.
Right? That's the elite. An individual is a business owner who works hard, even if they're wealthy by average standards. They're not the elites. They're not making the decisions. You're impacted as much as everyone else when it comes to these stupid policies they put in place. And their shitty economy is not helping you directly either. You're fighting against that just as much. So just wanted to put it out there.
And I want to talk about X and the recent banning in Brazil and what you think about how dangerous this is and how much it's going to cascade. Other countries are going to start doing this.
Oh, you're seeing it already. In Europe, they're doing that.
I know.
Yeah. This is interesting.
And I just want to preface this. So Brazil banned X. I listened to one, I forget the gentleman's name, but he's apparently he's a very dangerous man, all about censorship. And X, for those that don't know, Elon Musk has made, the media is going to smear him, say all these things, but the reason, in my opinion, why they're smearing him is because they cannot control the narrative on X. They don't like that. They like control, which is why they like legacy media. It's much easier to control. And back to the point that we made earlier, why are governments trying to regulate news on the internet so they can control the narrative and control your minds or your opinions? So X, and Elon Musk has made this very clear, that X is not, it is a platform. It's essentially a town square. So you have your voice. If it's not illegal in the Constitution, you can do whatever you want. If it's illegal in the Constitution, or if it's illegal according to American law, you cannot do that. He has made that crystal clear. And just because you post something that he doesn't agree with does not necessarily equate to him removing the content. The Democrats and the Liberals today in Canada do not like this. They want to be able to remove and influence what's posted on the platform. So Brazil just banned X. And then you alluded to the fact that Europe is starting to do this as well, or specific European countries. And I didn't know this, so I'll let you take it from here. But sorry, my last point. This, because people are not listening to legacy media anymore, and because they're going to platforms like X, if you start censoring news or altogether making it where you can't even get unbiased news, it's not a perfect system, what X is. It's actually very, democracy is very dirty. But you don't necessarily like everything. But if you think that this isn't dangerous, oh boy, you're living under a rock.
It's probably, well, first of all, it just blows my mind how overt now they're coming out with the control. Because they're losing. Again, when people are pushing a corner, they become dangerous. And that's the same for politicians and for regulators and for people in power. Yeah. They feel like they are losing control over a very important media dissemination tool. Call it that.
Propaganda.
Or information dissemination tool. And they are going full tyrannical, like full blown. They're not even hiding it.
Yep.
Sending letters to X, Twitter, Elon Musk, saying that if you don't, shut down the service and or censor certain posts or topic we want you to, we will fine you, sue you, ban you, remove you. I mean, you saw the same thing what happened in France with Pavel, the guy from
Telegram.
Yeah. Same thing. Any alternate source of media dissemination is being targeted systematically. And we're here just saying, it's good. It's preventing hate speech. Are you fucking out of your mind?
You're living under a rock.
Well, it's more than living under, look, anytime you allow someone a freedom or a right, there is a risk inherently attached to it. We let people drive. They could crash their car, drive drunk, kill people. You allow people to talk. They could say dumbass shit.
Yep.
And, and I'm not foreign to saying dumbass shit.
Yeah, me either.
Amen to that. However, I much rather, and I believe society works better with dangerous freedoms rather than safe control or safe, call it control, being safely controlled. In the end, if we lose our ability to speak freely, to challenge ideas, to add context or counterpoints to narratives, well, we become no different than in 1984, where a population who believes that up is down, down is up, right is wrong, and wrong is right, and they believe what the state tells them rather than what they see and hear, well, that's where we're going to head. And don't think, and this is what blows my mind, because we see it every day. People will watch shows or movies, and they'll really get behind the protagonist. They'll be like, how can people not realize in the show that the government's controlling them, or like the bad people are in power, and they really get invested? But then they think that day to day in real life, this shit doesn't happen. It's like, nah, man. If someone created it mentally for a show, it can happen in real life, and it does. I mean, you don't have to go far. Go to any declassified information, and so many different governments have partaken and colluded to
censorship,
to control people or to do really shady shit. Humans are flawed. We've mentioned this. Greed is real, and power does corrupt. And we're here saying, nah, the government's there to protect us. They just want the best for us. Nah, far from it. So we need to be able to challenge them. And the step number one to challenge them is to voice opposition to them, to be able to regroup other people who think like you, to exchange ideas, but also to exchange ideas with opposing parties. And this is what also blows my mind, is that you and I have our views and our beliefs, but never once, even though some people would perhaps even label us as extreme, some people might, but we're always prone the ability to hear both sides and for people to have discourse. And I've never once in my life cut someone out of my life or insulted someone because of their beliefs. I may think that the idea is wrong, or maybe they're not right, but I'm not going to be like, you're a piece of shit, I don't want to ever talk to you again. But yet there's more and more of a faction of society, and most of them are in power, who will villainize you and demonize you if you do not abide by their mentality, their way of life, their views, effectively. So Brazil, certain European countries, and even European Commission are starting to attack directly and head on Twitter, X, my bad, and also other, communication apps like Telegram. And we're here saying, well, because there are some horrible things being said on those platforms, we should probably shut it down. In which world does this end? In which society before has ever been righteous in censoring anything? We look at the Nazis, we look at, China, communist China, North Korea, just plenty of examples. And we're like, censorship is never good. But yet we're here and we're flat out proning censorship. Under the guise of doing the right thing. It's always going to be under the guise of doing the right thing. We want to be nice, right? We don't want hate speech. We don't want to hurt people's feelings. I'd venture to say, again.
But it's like they fail to, people who say that, well, it's hate speech on the platform, that shouldn't be there. That you're proving the important, in the Constitution, the first rule is free speech. You're proving the point when someone says that. It's like, but this is what people need to realize. Okay, fine. You don't like what's being posted on X. Who now, if you don't like that, now the next step is, well, someone needs to regulate it. So who's going to regulate it? The government. How are they going to unbiasedly be the arbiter of what's truth? And if you pick up a history book, when the government starts to become the arbiter of what's right and what is wrong, I have yet to see a happy ending. And so people just need to run through that thought process in their heads and say, okay, I don't like what's here. The government's going to regulate this. They have my best interest at heart. Once you let the camel's nose under the tent, that's where all hell can start to break loose. And it's like when you give, just like what Edward Snowden said, he's like, I didn't like... At the time, he goes, yeah, you're right. There's no political party or political person in power that actually, as far as he knew, that actually wanted to like turn the dial all the way there. But you're giving them the power to do so. And human nature is when, it's kind of like when someone passes a law and goes, but we're never going to enforce it. Or someone says, or government says, no, don't worry. It's just a temporary tax. We're going to get rid of this soon. I mean, give me a break. When you give them the power to actually do it, you're putting so much trust in this person to not abuse their power. And that person in particular might not ever abuse the power, but the institution itself has the ability to abuse that power. And eventually somebody will. This is human nature 101. And people need to, you and I work with a lot of employees, and the fact that our businesses are still standing, I think that we probably have a better understanding of human nature than the average person. Any business owner can say that. And, we're speaking with experience. If you give someone the ability, they have the capability to do it, eventually they're most likely going to do that, whether that's abuse of power or in any other means.
And especially when there's no accountability, because ultimately, if you give the government a power to, say, censor someone, right? It's not Justin Trudeau who's going to personally call say, the head of the Department of Censorship and say, remove that. It's going to be some unelected, shady bureaucrat in Ottawa that's nameless, faceless, not accountable to the populace, who will do that. And then you may be like, yeah, okay, well, why don't you vote new politicians in who will clean it up? Well, I'll use, again, real life experience that came from business. Many years ago, we were invited to the Ministère des Transports, the Ministry of Transport of Quebec, to present a solution or platform to them. And we met with the chief of staff for the Minister of Transport. At the time, it was Ministre Bonnardel. And we met with his chief of staff. This is the second in command, effectively, in the whole department. And he sat down in an office in Quebec City and heard our pitch. And the guy comes from the private sector. So he was a businessman before. I said, guys, this is incredible. Honestly, great innovation. Will never work here. I was like, wow, well, you seem so adamant that it's a good innovation. Why wouldn't it work here? And this is where he told me, he said the quiet part out loud. I knew this, you know this, everyone knows this, but to have the second in command admit to this has changed my view on the government. He's like, how many people work at the Ministère des Transports? And I was like, I don't know. It's like 5,800. Out of those 5,800, how many are appointed here or elected? I'm like, I don't know. It's like 11, 12. Those are political positions. They change with each passing government. The rest are there before, they'll be there after. And then he started telling me, I came from the private sector, I was a businessman. And when my good friend, my very good friend Bonnardel was elected, he came to me and said, Viens m'aider, come help me in the government. We're gonna make a difference. We're gonna change things. And I was so hesitant because I'm like, fuck that, nothing's gonna happen. It's the public sector, I don't wanna deal with this. And he's like, nah, you're gonna have full reign to really implement stuff. So I relented and I gave in. I came here. I don't think I'm going to last the entire term because those 5,800 people, it's a machine you cannot change. You cannot move. They will resist everything you do. So then I said, are you telling me it's corrupted? He's like, I'm telling you it's corrupted. And to hear it from, again, the chief of staff of the Minister of Transport, I was like, wow. So if he can't do anything, he can't even implement what he believes to be right, who can? Those bureaucrats or those employees are way too powerful. So now give them the power to legislate or to control or to make decisions, to be the arbitrator of free speech or of speech, period. And we're looking at the biggest slippery slope because call him employee A, who just doesn't like, say, meat eaters, will think, you know what, I'm righteously believing that veganism is the best thing ever. And they believe they're saving the planet, by the way.
Yeah, I know.
And that's the thing, right? When you believe you're doing the right thing for society,
the ideology takes hold of them.
Right? So now you get censored. The person who believes that any political ideology is not the right one, same thing. They are saving democracy. And you hear in the media already, right? They're saving democracy. They're safeguarding freedom. Well, how can you argue with that? You know? And that makes it very hard. Those extremes, by the way, those ultimate statements that one person or one idea is democracy and freedom and the other one isn't, is insanity. That in itself should scare anyone else, right? Freedom is being able to make your choices for yourself and not being told what's right or wrong. Mind you, within the bounds, again, and that's why there's always a little bit of gray in there, right? I'm not saying like total freedom would be allowed to go murder people. No, we have a rule of law that we've all agreed there's right and wrong.
What was that saying when Jordan Peterson totally annihilated Kathy Newman?
Best interview in the world,
by the way. What did he say? What was the line? He goes, because in order to think, you have to risk being offensive.
Yes.
And then he looks at her and goes, well, you're perfectly willing to offend me right now.
Yeah.
What gives you the right to do that?
Exactly.
And he was being cheeky.
Yes.
And she kind of, and that's where he stumped her.
I know. She just,
well, because she was basically saying, who gives you the right to offend trans people? Yeah. And he looks at her and is essentially saying, well, who gives you the right to try and offend me?
Exactly.
And she couldn't answer the question.
Yeah. And she had been, like you said, it's been rather uncomfortable.
Yeah, right? yeah. He goes, and then he smirked.
He's the GOAT.
Yeah. Dude, listening to Jordan Peterson, look, he can get dark. If you, speaking from experience, man, if you want to take a look in the mirror and better yourself, go listen to Jordan Peterson. I'm not talking about like one podcast. Don't listen to how CBC or all these other platforms or left-leaning media outlets are smearing him. Go listen to him for yourself. And man, if you actually listen to what he's saying, it could be, and I think that's why a lot of people get uncomfortable listening to him, because you're essentially putting a mirror in front of your face and you're addressing the internal demons that you have like in your brain. At least that's what it was like for me. Yeah. And
I read his book.
Yeah.
It was the most challenging read ever. Not necessarily because of the language, English is my
It makes you think.
It makes you think.
He's a philosopher.
Oh, for sure.
He's a philosopher. He's like the Plato of our time.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's absolutely a philosopher.
And like you said, the hard part about reading his book or listening to him is that mirror effect, because you're confronted with your own shortcomings.
Correct.
And your own failure to address certain parts of you. Now, luckily, he also gives you the tools and the ability to say, hey, you can take your life in your own hands. But he also makes you feel probably very alone. A lot of people, again, believe that there's a society, there's a blanket, there's people there to coddle and to care for their needs. But when you realize that there's nobody coming to save you, and you are the ultimate person who can help you.
That's a great line. Nobody's coming to save you.
At all, ever, in anything.
Yeah.
Nobody's coming to say, if you're sitting there, and we talk a lot about politics, granted, but the reality is this: I don't think overnight, whether Trump is in office or Podiev is in office, or there's a great reset of sorts, that things will necessarily fundamentally change unless people take responsibility to do the right thing by them.
I agree.
You cannot just have a government that comes and fixes everything, because to give the power to government to fix everything, it's also giving them power to do the wrong thing. And that's what we advocate against. Yeah. We want people to take responsibility for themselves. We want government to create a playing field that is as constructive and as fertile as possible for people to succeed and to have good lives. But ultimately, the choice remains yours. If you want to wake up in the morning and do a bunch of freaking, Ativan or freaking cocaine, that's your prerogative. Go ahead, destroy your life. But if you want to get up, hustle, work hard, take risks, and do right by you and by your dreams and by your ambitions, then you should have a playing field, a society, a structure that can allow you to achieve those goals. But ultimately, the choice remains yours. You wake up, you go to work, you work out, you make the right choices every day, and not all the time. You're a human. You're fallible.
Of course, yeah.
I enjoy the occasional drink or 2 or 10, but nonetheless, I try to do the right thing every day, right? Yeah. So if I'm drinking, I'm not doing blow. No, but but jokes aside, I'm actually never done cocaine. I am so against drugs, but I don't tell people they shouldn't, however, right?
Yeah.
Just like I love meat, but if you want to freaking eat some broccoli, by all means.
Yeah.
But ultimately, it is our choice every day to do the right thing, and people need to take accountability for their lives. If you can fix, and I love the whole make your bed. You heard that statement, right?
Yeah.
If you want to change the world, start by making your bed.
Yeah.
If you can control your micro environment, right, then it leads into bigger and bigger and bigger things. But if you think you're going to wake up tomorrow and become president of the world, right, and you can't even tidy your own freaking room, you're out of this world. Okay, it ain't going to happen. Yeah. So start small. And then after that, take care of your friends and your family. For real. You're not going to change again government tomorrow, but you can take care of the people close to you. And then advocate to have community take care of each other. Work with your neighbors. Work with your church. Work with your community center. I don't know, whatever. Work with your sports team, right? Work with a small community. Affect people's life at the local level. Do good there. Now, here's the beauty. It's a compounding effect. If everyone takes care of themselves, first and foremost, then their family, and then their community at large, and if everyone does the right thing, you end up again with a system like the Nordic countries, which are very prosperous, where people don't abuse the system, where people for the most part contribute heavily and also live a good quality of life. But again, this goes back in another topic, the mass migration. If you dilute society to a point where you don't feel an attachment or cohesion within society,
to the values,
to the culture, to the language, to no matter what, you can't even celebrate Christmas anywhere, it's like you say Christmas, that's bad. To any of what makes your society a society, well, people are much less likely to do the right thing, to become apathetic to the whole system, and to sadly succumb to distractions, whether it be through, consumptions or through short-term pleasure, or no matter what it is. And I think that's where we're at a point in society right now where people have succumbed to just plain
dopamine.
Apathy. You know, it's sad because I got to see it last winter. I spent winter living in Portugal, in Lisbon. I have some family that own property over there, so I was lucky enough to, you know, have a nice place to stay in Lisboa. And I had been told so much about a country, how beautiful it was, and it is insanely beautiful. But there's one thing that struck me very deeply when I was there, and it was this generalized apathy in society. Now, you have to understand the economic reality around it. The median income for a Portuguese individual is 1,200 euros a month. That's the median, right? And yet rents are sometimes 2,000 or more euros, right? There's been a influx of foreigners, expats, due to the government wanting to fund themselves and creating beautifully crafted schemes with visas and with golden visas and with residency permits. And it brought a lot of foreign money in. But, you know, American, Canadian, or German salaries compared to 1,200 euros a month is, well, worlds of different. And these people have been impoverished to a point where they are going through life in zombie mode. They walk the street soulless. And it's such a shame because it's a rich culture, but it blew my mind how, again, zombie-like society was. And I realized, well, sadly, that's an easy society to control. People are just trying to survive. They're just trying to be able to have enough food on the table. They're not going to stand up for anything. They just want to get by. Well, I feel the same is slowly happening in Canada for different reasons, but nonetheless, we're building a very apathetic society. It creates a dirty society, a society where, like, our cities now are disgusting.
Filthy.
Right? Filthy.
Montreal's disgusting.
Disgusting.
Downtown, there's graffiti everywhere. It's dirty. The construction everywhere. It's fucking gross. It's sad. And a lady on, sorry to interrupt you there, but one lady on, I forget which radio station, she's Francophone, and she goes, and she put it perfectly. She's like, I feel like our city's become like Gotham City in Batman.
That's a good one.
She's like, it's crime. There's crime everywhere. Fucking graffiti everywhere. It's dirty. The business isn't doing well. I'll let you continue.
Well, it's exactly that. And I mean, I'm guilty a little bit of that as well. It's when you feel like you're being screwed by the system, as the Portuguese feel like they are by the government, it creates that apathy. And I'll use a personal example, and maybe people are going to roast me for this. When I was like, I don't know, 18, 19 years old, I remember I was parked somewhere. I was just chilling in my car, and I was hacking a dart. I was hacking darts, all right? And at one point, the public security, the pube, right, comes up, and he tells me I can't be in that parking lot. It's past 10 p.m., and I need to get out of there. So I said, okay, fine. You know, you got nothing better to do, but by all means. So I take my cigarette butt, and I flick it out the window, and I drive off. A couple weeks later, I get a ticket in the mail for littering, right? What happened is this. I felt like I was wronged. For right or for wrong, look, I did it. But I mean, come on, a cigarette butt, it's like $150 ticket, but whatever. I felt like I was abused by the system. Young, stupid, and naive perhaps. But so I thought from now on, the city of Beaconsfield, well, I'm going to get my money's worth. I'm going to throw every goddamn piece of trash I ever have on your property because I don't care. Screw that. I feel screwed by you, Beaconsfield. So I'm going to get my money's worth. So I had a water bottle out the window. Horrible. I don't do that anymore. But at the time, that's how I felt. I was apathetic to the system. I was even rebelling against the system. And I, in my own tiny little way, created negativity or a loss, in a way, for the residents of Beaconsfield. I made it dirtier than it should have been. Now, mind you, I didn't have a huge impact, but still. But now, create...
But do that at scale.
At scale, there you go.
There's an issue.
And then there's an issue.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's happening in our society right now. People feel disenfranchised. They feel unheard. They feel stressed, used, broken. And they're at a point right now where they don't care. And it creates a negative spiral where then you start screwing over your fellow citizens. You start screwing over the government. You start screwing over your employer. You end up in a place where it's just like, me against the world, fuck you. And yes, we spoke about how nobody cares. You're right. But you can still do the right thing for society. Yeah. There is a right and wrong ultimately. But if you're at a point where it's like you're throwing up fuck yous left and right and you're just like, you know, cruising and doing anything in a negative fashion, well, at that point, your society's collapsing. I think that's where we're at now.
You know what? Okay. I think that's a good place to end it at.
Good. Yeah. Good. Thanks, man.
Elliot, I really appreciate you coming on here today, man. That was a great conversation. One of the better ones.
Oh, no, the better one?
One of the better ones.
You never know how it's going to be, right?
That was great. That was a good, I don't want to call it a rant. That was a good monologue you had at the end there.
Yeah, sorry, man. So you're good at
keeping.
Out. Yeah, you're good at keeping me in line. You've been excellent at that. Because that's the thing. You fucking let me go, and I'll talk for 2 hours. And I'm not saying it's interesting. You're just gonna be like, okay, there.
Yeah.
One day I'm gonna be an old boomer, and it's gonna be okay, granddad.
I can't wait to be an old boomer. I'm gonna be unhinged when I'm an old boomer.
Already it sounds so bad, but yeah. I'm 33 or
35.
35. Okay. Yeah. The older I get, the worse I become.
Yeah.
Like
wait till we're 60.
It's gonna be disgusting. Make sure you keep this podcast going.
Yeah, right? I'm gonna try. I appreciate your time, Elliot. This is the KBD Podcast, and thanks for tuning in.